We love old cemeteries and churchyards, so come with us as we explore these places for the past. Today we are in Penicuik and we're going through this little building site because we're going to go and visit Penicuik Trinity Community Church's graveyard, which I'm guessing was not part of Penicuik Trinity Community Church when it was actually in use. Oh no, there's a rather old church there, and that's the Trinity Church there, which is from 1880. So let's go and see what we can see. Now there is a big fence there, so that's probably limited, but I know something you don't know because I've been here before. I've got a surprise for you about that big fence. And when you walk in, the first thing that you see is a stone for Thomas Jenkinson, and that is from 1847 or 1825, early 1800s-ish. And over here is another Jenkinson who was a mason who died in 1862. So let's go and see what we can see. This is another quite old and historic churchyard, so hopefully we'll find a lot of things that are quite interesting, especially that big church, which does look quite impressive. I've already noticed something quite interesting about the gravestones here. This is John Alexander, a late farmer in Beeslack, who died on the 19th of September, aged 31. That was in 1829. And his wife was 52 and his daughter was 33, and his son, who was Inspector of Poor and Registrar of Births, etc. in this parish, who was 58. And his widow, who was 62, and their daughter, who was 26. So that's lots of good ages. No died in infancy there. And on this one we've got James Alexander, who was a farmer. Oh, that was John Alexander, and this is James Alexander, who died at Easterdeans in 1873, and his wife, who was 57, and their son, who was 24, and their daughter, who was 25, and their son, who was 41, and their daughter, who was 56, and their son, who was 55, and their son, who was 75. So no died in infancies on that gravestone. That's interesting, because usually there's one or two, or lots. But it couldn't last. This stone was put up by Susan Dryden in remembrance of her husband Andrew Patterson, who was an iron founder from Penicuik, and of his son James Patterson, and also of Susan herself, and her son John, who was a banker in Penicuik, and his wife Margaret, and then at the bottom, and three of their children, Isabel, Andrew James and Archibald, who died young. I've never noticed this before. That's quite impressive imagination from the parents. This is the grave of Alexander. It is quite a nice atmospheric graveyard. We're going to do our usual see how far back in history we can get, but at the moment we are in the mid to late 1800s. What about you? Erected by Abraham Henderson in memory of his father, who died 1848. And this one is, here lies the body of Mary Russell, who died 1852. And when I said that church was newer, it was built in 1771 originally to replace this one. An interesting fact, that tower was built in 3 stages, and the bottom stage was originally a prison, so we'll go for a wee look at that if we can get past that fence. But as I said, I already know the answer to that one. So the old church is medieval, and this next to it, the pyramid thing, is the Clark Mausoleum, which dates back to 1684, and once upon a time that had an urn at the top of the pyramid, so a pyramid in the 1680s. That's quite nice. The problem with it now is it is suffering quite a lot, and as you can see there, it's getting a bit precarious and bits are falling off it, which is never a good thing. Now there's an inscription we haven't seen before. This stone marks the grave of James Lorry, who died in 1830. So yeah, just in case you didn't know that was a stone, he's letting you know. And next to it we've got a more traditional erected in memory of John Simpson, late of Kirkhill, who died in 1826, so we're right back in the early 1820s. Next, 1887, we've just jumped forward. What about over here? Let's go and look at John Cowan and Margaret Veitch, and that was 1832. This one is also, that's got a thistle and a rose and whatever those are. Thomas Migel, a blacksmith from Penicuik, who died in 1854, aged 48, and his wife Alison, who was 71, and their daughter, who was 9, and their eldest son, who was 21, and their second son, who was 25, and then the third son, who was drowned at St Helier in Jersey on the 9th of March 1871. And then the most interesting one of them all, not that they're not all interesting, is the fourth son, who died at sea on his way home from Bombay in 1877. It wouldn't be a proper oldie graveyard if there weren't stones that were on the point of toppling over. This piece of tape here is to keep you safe, so if it falls over it won't hurt because it's got a bit of red and white tape around it. This is in memory of Peter Grieve, husband of Catherine Robertson, from 1927. Ah, that must be a later edition. Anything older down the bottom? 1914, no, that is 1900s there. And this one behind it is 1844. Alright, so 1844, 19 something. Yeah, okay, a lot of variety in dates. Oh, let's head over here to this rather grand plot and see who it belongs to. I do love the rusting and the weathering on this stone that is in memory of John Bell, who died, D-Y-E-D, in Penicuik, spelt differently, on the 25th of January 1831, aged 81. Wow, he made it to a good age for those days. This burial ground here is for the Browns of Esk Mills, Esk Mills being paper mills in the valley. Penicuik used to be famous for making paper, so there's lots and lots of Browns. There's Agnes and James and Ebenezer John Brown MD, and some tabletop gravestones. So let's go and see what we can see on these. Now these are actually upside down, and I knew that from the last time I was here. Can we find any dates? Henrietta Brown, daughter of Andrew Brown, Esquire of Dolphin Town, and wife of Mr. Thomas McSomething, blah blah blah. Anyway, we're looking for a date. The 2nd day of May 1721. Okay, so that's 1721, and this one is a bit less legible, but let's see if we can see a date. There must be a date on here somewhere. I will find it and I will get back to you. Okay, told you I would get back to you. I can't actually see it. It looks like something 1, and then that's either a 7 or an 8. 64, but I can't tell which it is. This is the original sort of centrepiece of the whole thing over here, and it is getting a bit worn away. It's just carved into the sandstone, but it's probably quite an interesting thing if you can read it, which I can't. You can read this bit at the bottom. It says, Elizabeth McGeorge, daughter to Mr. William McGeorge, minister of the gospel at Penicuik, spelled C-O-O-K, died in the 1724. So yeah, so we're back in the 1700s. There's a 1674 down there, but I don't. Somebody, McGeorge, Mr. William McGeorge, who died in 1711. Is that an 11 or a 41? Anyway, died in the 1700s, was born in 1674. Fascinating, fascinating. And that's quite an impressive stone. As we always say, if you want a stone that lasts, make it out of granite. And that is erected in loving memory of Peter Dow, a minister of Penicuik, by the congregation and friends. He died in 1887, so that's quite a late stone that's been put onto quite an early plot. I don't know why. Here's another reverend, memory of the Reverend David Duncan of Howgate, who died in 1866. These guys have got the longest lasting stones. They did like their granite. And this other little private fenced off plot is for the Thorburns. John Thorburn, late proprietor in Penicuik, who died in 1832. Proprietor of a paper mill, I would imagine. Most of the people in Penicuik who had lots and lots of money were either owners or operators of the paper mills. It is quite an impressive fence, and the sign says no entry, and this gravestone says erected by Thomas Lowry and Agnes Smittle, his spouse, to the memory of their daughter Elizabeth Lowry, who died 22nd October 1825. And next to Elizabeth's little grave there is a big hole in the fence. So let's sneak through into a bit that from here looks like it might be a wee bitty older. It starts off with John Stark in living memory of Martin Faughey Stark, beloved husband of Maggie Abernethy, who died in, come on, give us a year, 1889. But down here it looks like we're getting back into the older stuff. This stone, our first appearance so far of the skull and the crossbones. Right, this is interesting. If we're reading this properly, it says this stone was erected by William Irvin of Rowan Hill in memory of his ancestors and of William, who died young, and also Christian Lindsay, his wife, who died the 24th of June, J-U-E, 1729. So we are back in the 1700s. This has got to be a replacement stone, I would think, judging by the fact it's in very good condition. But here lieth William Craig, son of the late William Kerr, Egg, farmer in Penicuik Tower, who died 16th of January 1793, aged 35 years. This stone is erected by his affectionate Oh, I can't see what that says. Margaret Craig, one of his executors. The said Margaret Craig died 7th of February 1790, aged 74 years. Yeah, that's an interesting inscription on that one. Well, I think it's interesting. And behind it we've got one that I'm probably not going to be able to read very well. No, that's pretty far gone. Let's see what's around here. It's got a skull on it, so it's an old one. A skull there. And and a winged cherub on the front. And the date on that one is 1737, so that, yes, that is a very old stone. And this one that is hiding away under here is also quite cool. It's got a winged thing at the top and the skull, and that banner across the top I put money said Memento Mori. And then there's crossbones, and below that some sort of tools, some sort of, looks like a digging implement. This guy could well have been a farmer. These stones are definitely worth a closer look. It says this stone was erected by John Wilson in memory of William Wilson, his father, tenant in Mauricewood, who died the 7th of April 1805. So there's the other side of the mausoleum, and it did say on the thing I was reading that there used to be an urn at the top of that. I wonder if that is the urn that was at the top of that lying there. Would you say that was an urn? Certainly it would have looked quite good up on top of your mausoleum. We have mentioned that Penicuik is a paper town, or was a paper town, and this is the grave of Adam Ramage, who was born at Walston in 1779. He died at Valleyfield being the paper mill, in 1850. For nearly 50 years he was the faithful and honoured servant and overseer at Valleyfield paper mills, where he enjoyed the respect and the friendship of his masters, I'll bet, and of the work people under him. This stone was erected by the masons A. Cowan and Sons in 1858. Right, let's keep going down this way and see what we can see. It's a real shame that a lot of the sandstone has gone. That's probably, let's see if we can see a date on this, just for the sake of, that's definitely 1904 down there. So, and that is, I'm going to guess 1840, but that would be a, oh look what's over there. There is a really, really cool looking, iconic oldie Scottish type gravestone. Let's have a wee look and see what we can see. We can see the winged skull at the top, which has been carved through the stone. That's quite impressive. We can see the skull and the crossbones. We can see D, H and AS, but most importantly we can see 1686. So that is a very, very old stone. Can we see anything on the one next to it? It's again, you probably could, but I can't. There's still some writing there, but it's all kind of getting lost under the moss and the flaky stone that is carved into the wall of the church. I don't think that was a gravestone. That just looks like a bit of a status symbol, maybe from somebody who paid to get the church fixed or something. These people often did it so they could get their name on the church and obviously put a good word in with the big man that they thought lived upstairs. So that stone is from 1824. So let's have a look in here and see if there's anything to no, there's not. There's an old sink in the corner, or it might be an old toilet, I'm not sure. Anyway, it is irrelevant. And the building over there is closed, which is a shame, but let's keep going around here and see if we can find any more really, really old stuff. 1855 for Andrew McKean there, 1858 for Lilius Bryden. There's a name we've never seen before. It's getting to do these so often now. There's not many names that we've never seen, but Lilius, hello, you are a new one on us. If you're into your Scottish history and Scottish literature, you may know the book Rab and His Friends. Well, the people who that's based on, the carriers who that is based on, are actually buried in this churchyard in an unmarked grave, and that has been put up in memory of them, sacred to the memory of the Howgate carrier and his wife Ali, who lie buried in this churchyard. That's a really well carved hourglass, and beside it it says Horror and I don't know, L-U don't know, it must be something in Latin, but that was erected to the memory of Alexander Kieran Mason in Penicuik, spelt differently again, who died June the 2nd, and then the important bit's gone. Okay, so he died June the 2nd of a year that we can't actually tell you. And next to that is another wonderfully worn old stone, sacred to the memory of William Hopper, who again was a paper maker at Auchendinny Mill. Auchendinny is a wee village not very far away from here. We'll take you through that one day. There's a really good railway path sort of walk that goes through there, and he died in 1812, aged 52. And over on the wall of the church itself there is this, which is definitely not going to be legible, but it is quite cool. And this is the tower of the church that we know from the sign that we read over there, was built in 3 stages, and the bottom stage was a prison. Now that doesn't mean that it's haunted, but it probably does mean that it's full of pigeons, so we'll probably get a pigeon in the face when we do this. Yeah, nothing to see there. So we're heading down towards the wall of the new church, or the new air church. There's somebody from Ledburn, which again is a Ledburn Hotel. I know where that is. He died in 1844. And next to him we've got William Anderson, who died at Venter Fair in 1872, and his wife, who died in 1872 as well. And a daughter who made it to 32, and a son who made it to 26. And their grandson, who died at Howgate in 1916. And their aunt. It's an eclectic mix on that one. And this one, look at that, I love the way this is worn. Sacred to the memory of Janet Alexander Cook, who died, again it's gone, you can't see the date. That's quite cool. That's a nice hourglass, memento mori, and the wings and the carvings and stuff. Oh, and it's from 1709, and it's got a little thing there for tying something up. That's interesting, not seen that before. Here lies Jamie Melrose, spouse to John Hodge, and against the actual wall of the church we've got a big stone from 1849, and next to that we've got this, which I think is going to be quite interesting. It says, "Here lie Annabelle Miller, spouse to Thomas Rutherford, papermaker," again, at Penicuik, who died the 1st day of April 1735, her age 52 years, and 2 of their children, viz. Catherine and Alison Rutherford, and Helen Rutherford, and then it starts to get a bit lost. That's quite cool, isn't it? At the bottom, again, memento mori, skull, crossbones, hourglass. It is quite a cool church, but as you can see, not very big, so that's probably why they had to build the big one that is behind me. You keep walking about these places and you turn round and you see something else, and I don't want this to start to get boring, but I suppose if you've watched this far you're interested in gravestones, so let's see what we can see on this one. Winged hourglass, memento mori, and a skull, and the bit at the top, that's Masonic dividers there. So this guy could have been a stone mason or a member of the Masons. I don't think the two of them are necessarily the same thing. And behind him, that is really well carved. Look at that, that's so neat. This stone was erected in memory of James Alex Ander, who was 10, and in Lockhart's Hill, who died the 3, and then they had to add the D above because the 3rd day of January 1797, aged 75 years. And over here I saw some more really old stones, which aren't always so interesting for reading, but they are a lot more interesting for just sort of the history of it. This one is pretty well gone. Text at the top is all illegible, and down the bottom you can probably still read it if you really try. So there you are, you want to really try, on you go, you're on your own with that one. And behind that there's this rather natty looking picnic table gravestone, tabletop gravestone. Let's see if we can find a date. I will find one and then I will get back to you. Now I can't see a date on that, but I often do when I look at the video afterwards, so I'm going to film this stone and then see if I can pick a date out from the inscriptions. This one, another quite nice stone. That's 1924. That is a fairly recent stone by the standards of this cemetery, maybe the newest burial in the place actually, in sweet remembrance of our darling Betty, who died in 1924, aged 7.5 years, interred in Warriston. Warriston is in Edinburgh. Okay, so not actually here, just a wee memorial with a nice wee birdie on it, albeit a birdie that has lost its heed. And round the back there's a Mankey Corner. Let's see what we can find in the Mankey Corner. In memory of Peter Cochrane, farmer of Poulton, who died there on 1844. And then down here on the wall of this little thing in front of us, which I can't identify, is William Cairns, portioner, I don't know what a portioner is, in Howgate, who died in 1820 something, and Jean, his wife, who died in 1837. Well, whoever that stone was for is lost under the moss, but over here there's another one that is quite impressive. That's quite a grand stone by the standards of this wee cemetery. Let's go and see if we can see who this was for. In memory of the Reverend William McEwen, minister of the United Associated Succession Church in Howgate. Alright, so it's a minister's stone. Ministers always seem to get really, really nice memorials. This one beside it is carved on both sides. Beneath this stone are deposited the earthly remains of Jean Blackie, spouse to Benjamin Wilson, who died in 1829, aged 67. Halls must be a place, because that is Thomas S. Wilson from Hall's, Penicuik, and this one was erected in the memory of David Wilson's, a tenant in Hall's who died in 1752, aged 47. The Reverend David Wilson, minister of the gospel at Lorry, who died in 1770, aged 28 years, and Christian Henderson, spouse of James, who died in 1793. And over here we've got something we need to go and research in memory of James Stark, our beloved son, who lost his life in the Mauricewood disaster. Now I know Mauricewood is an area of Penicuik, a mining area perhaps. I'll find out, and I'll put up a wee thing along the bottom here, down there somewhere, saying what the Mauricewood disaster was, if you're interested, and if you're not, I'll do it anyway. Well, this is another one of these particularly sad gravestones. I mean, gravestones are all, I suppose, kind of sad but interesting. But this is to the Linton family, and all the sort of main family are on that side. But on the back, they've got the grandchildren. Maybe the grandchildren couldn't have a tombstone anywhere else. So there's Sarah, who died in Glasgow, aged 1 month, and John, who died aged 17 months, and Euphemia, I love that name, aged 7 years and 10 months. So not a great life expectancy for the old Linton grandchildren. Yay! Somebody who didn't work in the paper mill and wasn't a farmer. This is the memory of James Wilson, who was a baker from Edinburgh, who died in 1814. Okay, let's head back up towards the comparatively newer part of the cemetery. There's another one with a winged face, and again, a metal bit. I don't know what the metal rings were for. That is something we will have to find out. If we do find out, we'll let you know, obviously. So it is quite an atmospheric wee... There's another one. These must be for... Well, that one's on the back. I think that's probably to hold the stone up, because I've seen some with like a bracing piece of metal in that. But it doesn't explain why the other ones had it in the front. See, that one's got one in the front, and that is from 1714 there, so that's a very, very old stone. This is quite a nice cemetery. I'm quite glad we came up this hill, because beside all the stones that are leaning against the wall, over here there's something that looks awfully like a sarcophagus, which is quite impressive. It looks pretty far gone for finding any writing on it, but that is really, really quite cool. I'm going to have a go at reading it, and if I find out what it says, I'll let you know, and if I don't, I'll just edit this bit out. So on the other side of that impressive sarcophagus thingy, it says, "Here lieth James Burnett JP, and 1832. There you go. The ring on the back is for a bracing thing, and round the side that says Memento. I bet it says Mori on the other side. Yay! There we go. Memento Mori. Remember, you are going to die. I am so glad that I've come down here. I wasn't planning on it because I didn't think it would be particularly interesting, but this graveyard is particularly interesting and an amazing survivor. It's still all here, and all the little architectural bits and pieces, all the bits of stone that are lying about, have not been nicked to be used for anything else, because some of them are quite ornate. Hello, Violet Carmichael, who died in 1882. We are just now heading up here, the last wee bit of the graveyard, because I spotted something from down there. And anybody who's watched more than about 10 minutes of any of our videos can probably guess what it is that I've spotted. It is that little standing up stone there, the small grey one. We're going to go and see if that is actually a Commonwealth Wargrave, because I think it is. Yep, it is the Lance Corporal R.P. Brown, King's Own Scottish Borderers from 1920. Hello, Lance Corporal Brown. That's had something glued on the front of it by the looks of things, with all the bits of adhesive, I guess, and all the lead is starting to fall out. I actually looked at that and thought, I wonder if any of it is lying down here, and there is a small lead R that I'm not going to touch, obviously. Here's a local man, William Wilson, who's a merchant from Penicuik, and then Walter Wilson, who was a mining engineer and their second son, who died at Colorado Springs, USA on the 30th of May 1903. He died a long way from home. And then next one down is John James Wilson, who was a bank agent, not interesting, but author of the Annals of Penicuik, who died at Glasgow. So there's a book called the Annals of Penicuik. I can wholeheartedly recommend you don't bother trying to track it down. This one over here is another guy who died a long way from home, not quite as far away as Colorado. This is a guy from Bury, which is an island in Orkney. Very picturesque. And I was just talking to myself over there against that wall and just noticed two people walking down the pavement on the other side. I must all think that I'm absolutely mad.